Okay, Bez Hashem Yisbarach, Masechta Chulin, Daf Kuf Zayin is today's daf, and we will be starting from 5 lines down from the top of the Amud. Now again, we're holding in the middle of a back and forth of trying to figure out a Tzad HaShava, dealing with Rav Ashi's question of when the Torah says Tayeva, when the Torah says anything is also, it falls under the category of Tayeva. And the question is why we need a pasuk to learn out each thing specifically from different psukim. Why do we learn it out from a Mahatzad, Tzad HaShava, Kal V'chomer? And the Gemara is going on and on about it. And again, just to be magdim, that although we could spend a lot of time being mefaret and explaining each and every piece of the drasha, how it works and what the proper kelim are to understand it, the Argavisam Armakaimis, the Atzmas Yosef, in his Pirush at the end of Kedushin, has a whole shtickle teta on how to understand the sugya. Halichas Elam talks about it, the Shlo, and Ginas Radim. These are the svarim that discuss these kind of things, and Bez Hashem Yisbarach one day, B'li we will learn them as well. So the Gemara is going to go to Isi ben Yehuda's drasha. So V'lifreich, let him have a pircha on the drasha from the following argument. What comparison can be made to Klayim, which are more chamer than basa b'chalav, and that they never had the time when they were mutter? The questioner, meaning the Magsha, was assuming that when a person plants Klayim, the original seeds, which didn't grow in a state of Klayim, remain mutter, and it's only the growth that grows out of the seeds becomes asur b'hana as Klayim is kilei hakar. Whatever is forbidden as Klayim, and never had a shasa kosher. This is a chumrah compared to basar b'chalav, where the isser basar and chalav, meaning the basar and the chalav, both had a shas heter before being cooked together. So Rav Bar says this that Isi ben Yehuda did not bring a pircha to the drasha by raising this point indicates that kilei hakarim ikra nesar. That regarding kilei hakarim, the original seed that existed before the introduction of Klayim becomes asur b'hana v'hoisel and shasa kosher k'damash rasha. And the seeds that were planted together and now became asur taka had a shasa kosher before they took root, which is very interesting because l'mais we have a problem with this because it's we know that it takes a little while. We know this from Melachas Shabbos that it takes a little while for the zroim to take root. So as soon as you put it in the ground, you could always go and take it back out, and there won't be any isser of Klayim, or theoretically, l'chara, there shouldn't be an isser of Klayim. Okay, so the Gemara is now going to ask on Rav Ada's kasha. Most of Rav Shmai bar Zira. Rav Shmai bar Zira asked the following question from a Mishnah. Where is this Mishnah? It's in Klayim Perek Zayin. It's also mentioned in Pesachim. Hamaver otetznakov bakaram. If a person transports a flower pot that has a hole in it in a vineyard, if it increased 1 part in 200 while it was passing through, it's asur. Hoisif in le hoisif loy, which implies that only if the plant increased this amount is the plant taka asur. But loy hoisif, if it didn't increase that much, the plant is not asur because the new Klayim becomes batal in the original plant, which is going to be mutter. So evidently, only what grows as a Klayim becomes asur and not the original plant. What are we talking about over here, b'chlal? A couple of things that's kedai to know. If a flower pot has a hole in it large enough to permit the passage of a small root, the plant inside obtains nourishment through the ear from the ground below. So therefore, if a person carries such a pot through a karam, through a vineyard, it's as if he planted it directly on the ground because it's being yonik from the ground, creating kilei hakaram. Now, the Mishnah Arla, beginning of Parak Beis, teaches that Arla and Klayim become batal only in a ratio of 200 to 1, meaning that if either of these forbidden foods become mixed up with dvarim hamutarim, the taruvus is mutter only if there are 200 parts of a heter for every 1 part of isra over here. Now, this is the basis for the Mishnah's halacha, which is further based on this, that only the portion of the plant that grew during the passage of the flower pot through the karam became asur as Klayim, and the part that was previously grown does not become asur. So together, the parts that are mutter and the parts that are asur constitute a new taruvus. So if while passing through the vineyard, the plant grew such an amount that the new growth now constitutes a 200th of its size, the new growth doesn't become batal in the remaining 199 parts of permitted growth, since you don't have 200 to 1, and becomes aser. If it grew, however, less than that amount, so there are 200 parts of Dvarim HaMutarim grown for every forbidden part, the new growth is going to be mutter. This is a big question in the Gemara. How do you figure out if it grew a 200th or not? But we will not be discussing that now. Okay. A little bit more about this. Even if the previously permitted portion of the plant would become aser once it takes root and starts growing in a state of klayim, then the plant would be aser regardless of the size of the increase, since no part is mutter, no bittul can take place. So what's the question? Oh, so the question is, so we see that only what grows as klayim becomes aser and not the original plant. So Abaye said, Trei Tvei psukim that are contradicting each other in regard to Kilei HaKaram. The Torah says, "Le'sizra karmacha k'layim pentikdash hamaleya hazera asher tizra utvos hakoram." You shall not sow your vineyard with a mixture, lest the growth of the seed being sown is forfeited. The Gemara notes that the word hamaleya hazera, the growth of the seed, convey two contradictory implications as to what becomes aser. Through the resolution of this apparent contradiction, Abaye also answers Rav Shmaya's kasha on what the Gemara just spoke. So Ksiv pentikdash hamaleya, the pasuk says, "Let the growth be forfeited," meaning let the growth become aser, which implies that only the new growth that grew in the state of klayim is aser, and not the portion of the plant that grew previously. Chsiv hazera, and it also says the seed should be aser, which implies that even the previously permitted part of the plant should become aser. How can we resolve this contradiction? It's as follows: Zarua me'ikrai, if the seed was planted in the vineyard from the outset, bahashrasha, the seed itself becomes aser when it takes root. The term "the seed," which implies that even the previously permitted seed becomes aser, is referring to a situation in which the grain of the vegetable seeds were initially planted in the vineyard. In that case, as soon as the seeds take root, the entire plant, even the previously permitted seeds, become aser. Rashi and Psachim explains that although this pasuk teaches that the planting of seeds in a state of klayim makes the seeds themselves aser, the isur takes effect only when they take root, because before that they're not considered as being planted in the earth, but as sitting in a jug, as we mentioned before also, that they're just sitting together, it doesn't bother anyone. Zarua uba, if however the seed was planted and took root previously, and continued to grow after being brought into the vineyard, hoisif in, lay hoisif light. If the plant increased by 200th, so the plant is taka aser, for the newly growth that will be aser does not become batal in the permitted existing portion of the plant. For in this case, where the plant already took root elsewhere, the implication of the term "the growth" zarua is applied, teaching that only the part that actually grew as a taruvus becomes aser, not the previously permitted plant. But if it didn't increase that much, the plant is not aser, because the new prohibited klayim growth becomes batal in the part which is mutter, which remains mutter even after it's brought through the kara. Okay. Adkan, this whole maisa with this maisa. Okay. Our Mishnah says that basa b'chalav is asa b'hana. Now the Gemara is going to bring a different shita, not like our Gemara, not like our Mishnah. Masnisin like Tana. Our Mishnah that holds that basa b'chalav is asa b'hana is not in accordance with the following Tana. The Tana we learn to the right. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda says the name Reb Shimon's time. Reb Shimon is Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. Basa b'chalav asa b'achila. Basa b'chalav is asa for eating, mutter b'hana, but it is mutter for beneficial. Now, because the pasuk says regarding the isra basa b'chalav, Ki am kadosh ata, for you are a holy people to Hashem, your God. You shall not cook a kid in the milk of its mother. And it says in the psukim that we saw last night and last year, and regarding a treif, you shall be holy men to me, and meat that's a treif in the field you shall not eat. Like to the dog you shall cast it. Malahalon. The common terms of Kadosh and Kodesh establish a Gzerah that teaches that just as there, meaning with regard to the meat of a treif as Asr Ba'achila but Mut Ba'ana, Avkan Asr Ba'achila Mutter b'hana. So to hear regarding basar b'chalav, it's also to eat, but it is mutter b'hana. As is evident from the fact that the pasuk says one will use the treifa meat to feed it to the dog. So let's summarize the shittas regarding the mikar of the isser of eating and being nene from basar b'chalav. So first we'll go with Rav Ashi, that he learns it up from the pasuk of Leisechel Kol Tayeva, you shall not eat any abomination, teaches that anything that's asr min Torah, such as basar b'chalav, is going to be asr. This applies b'hana as well, due to the drush of Rabbi Bo that teaches that wherever the Torah says you shall not eat, a isser against hana is also indicated. That's number one. Number two, we have Rish Lakish, that it says b'ashel mavushel b'mayim by the korban Pesach. So it teaches that basar b'chalav is asr b'hana, similar to a cooked korban Pesach. Shita number three is Rebbe. The isser against eating is learned out from the extra mention of the pasuk loisechlenu. You shall not eat it, in reference to the dam of psuli amukdashim. The Gemara brings the makar for the drash against being nana from the common term kaidash, saying that basar b'chalav and regarding loisia kedesha. And bismidrash shel Rebbe Eliezer. This is the fourth shita. Is l'sechal kol nevela, that even when you sell a nevela to a guy, you're not permitted to cook it with milk. Number 5, Beis Midrash Shol Bishmoel learns it out from l'savash l'gudi b'chalev yimei, which teaches that eating and being nene or cooking basar b'chalav is going to be asar. Number 6, you have Isi ben Yehuda, that the isra against basar b'chalav is learned out from the common term kodesh, said in regard to basar b'chalav and treifa. Hana is asr from Arla, Chametz, and Klayim. And Reb Shimon Yehuda, which I believe is the seventh shita, is going against our Mishnah, disputes our Mishnah, and maintains that the only achila is asr, as learned out from the term kodesh, said in reference to basar b'chalav and treifa, teaching that just as treifa is mutar ba'achila, as asr ba'achila mutar b'hana, so too basar b'chalav is asr ba'achila u mutar b'hana. Okay, that is the summary of this previous sugi. Again, we have Rav Ashi, Rish Lakish, Rabbi, Beis Midrash, Rav Eliezer, Beis Midrash, Tanadvei, Rav Eliezer, Tanadvei, Rishmael, Isi ben Yehuda, and Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. Okay. Back to the Mishnah. Reb Kiva Omer, Chaya v'oif. Now, where is this? Let's go back to this. Let's see if we can find this. It's been so long since we've seen that. Let's see. Okay, anyways, Reb Kiva Omer Chaya v'oif. Reb Kiva says the Chayas and Oif are not asur with milk minat Torah. The pasuk says that the savash agadi b'chalev yomai 3 times, which is memayit the meat of a chaya, oif, and non-kosher animals. The Gemara addresses how the 3 mentions of the word may be used for this limud. Rabbi Kiva's drashas are based on the premise that all 3 mentions of gedi are available for a drasha, as we will soon see. Hanihav kinlech Shmuel. You can't use these drashas to teach me that, because we already mentioned the term gedi for the drashas of Shmuel on Kufir Gimel Amud Beis, who darshan one to include chelav and avela, and in the Isra Basar B'chalav, one to include the Basar of Uber, that's Asar, and one to exclude non-kosher animal meat from the Isra as well. And therefore, granted that one mention of Gedi is needed to teach me the Isra of non-kosher meat, as maintained by Rabbi Kiva, nevertheless, the other 2 mentions are not available to be Memayet, Chayas, and Oifis. So what are we dealing with over here? What are we talking about? So Zok the Gemara, Kasav Rabbi Kiva Isra Chal Isra. Rabbi Kiva holds that one Isra is able to take effect upon a pre-existing Isra. Chelav u'meislei tzirchin krah. So chelav and meat of an animal that died without shechita and avela does not require a pasuk, which would meaning doesn't need a drasha of letzavash al gedi in order to be included in the Isra basar b'chalav. Memela, all 3 mentions of gedi in the pasuk are available for the drasha, because the Torah could have written each time you shall not cook an animal. Why did the Torah say letzavash al gedi? Therefore, according to Rabbi Kiva, the basic basar b'chalav is learnt out from the pasuk letzavash al gedi, while the fact that the Torah uses gedi rather than animal each time indicates that the meat of a chaya, an oif, and a tameya are excluded from the Isser. So shlil gedi mal yehu. As far as the fetus is concerned, he holds that it's a bona fide gedi, and there is no need to learn it out from one mention of the word gedi. Unlike Shmuel, who holds that the meat of an uber requires a drasha to include in the Isser, Rabbi Kiva maintains that a uber is the same as a born animal, and it's encompassed by the basic basar b'chalav Isser, and there's no need to darshan one mention of Gedi to include it. Yatru lehu kulu. So therefore, all three mentions of the pasuk of the word Gedi in the pasuk remains available to darshan. Prat lechaya v'oif u'lebehemat tmeya. So Mamela, he will these three drashas, these three psukim of Gedi are going to exclude chaya. One will exclude oif, and the other will exclude non-kosher animals. Rabbi Yossi Glili Ermin Ema Lo Yisaychlu. Rabbi Yossi divided the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yossi Glili says, Lo Yisaychlu, you shall not eat any nevela. And it says, which is a hekesh between the two psukim. So the hekesh teaches us that which is subject to the Isra of nevela is also to cook with milk. The Mishnah goes on to explain that birds, although have Isra nevela, are not also to cook with milk, because the Torah says, which excludes birds that has no mother's milk. The Gemara asks, in fact, the Gemara, what's the difference between the Shita of Rabbi Yossi Glili, who learns that the pasuk B'chalevi Mai excludes birds, and that Rabbi Kiva, who learns this from the extra mention of the word Gedi? So the Gemara, there's a difference between them. The difference between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Kiva is regarding meat of a chaya with milk. Rabbi Yossi Glili savar chaya deraisa, Rabbi Kiva savar chaya derabban. Rabbi Yossi Glili holds that meat of a chaya with chalav is asur min haTorah, because according to Rabbi Yossi Glili, the drasha, the hekesh of basa b'chalav to nevela teaches that anything that's subject to the Yisra nevela is subject to the Yisra of basa b'chalav, besides for birds, which is excluded by the pasuk of b'chalevi mai. Rabbi Kiva savar chaya derabban, while Rabbi Kiva holds that the meat of a chaya with milk is asur only midrabban. Yiba yizema. Or we could say different teretz, that the difference between them is oif. Rabbi Kiva savar chayav oif ena min haTorah. Rabbi Kiva holds that chayav oif are not also with milk min haTorah, which implies that the drasha is only from the Isra HaTorah Midrabban Asiri, but midrab, meaning that they're not nichlal in the Isra Midiraisa, Hamidrabban Asiri, but under rabbinical law they are aser. Rabbi Yossi Glili savar oif afilu midrabban amilay aser. While Rabbi Yossi Glili holds that chicken meat, fowl, is not also even with milk, even in the Rabbanan, as there's no indication in the statement to indicate a Isra Rabbanan Hibachla. The Gemara now wants to bring a raya for this, that according to Rabbi Yossi Glili, there's no Isra regarding boids with milk. Tani Nami Yacham Adachi learned in a Braisa, B'mekayim Rabbi Eliezer, in Rabbi Eliezer's place, you curse in Eitzim Lasses B'cham Lasses Barzel. They will cut down trees on Shabbos to make charcoal in order to make a knife for a bris milah. The Torah commands that a newborn boy is to get a bris milah on the 8th day, even if it falls on a Shabbos. Kamavur b'gemar Shabbos tafkuf lamed beis. Despite that the bris entails a malacha that's also on Shabbos, Rabbi Eliezer holds that if a mitzvah is deicha Shabbos, the hachana for the mitzvah, including those that could have been done before Shabbos, are also performed on Shabbos. If no knife is available, you're allowed to cut down trees to make charcoal, to make metal, to manufacture a knife. The Brisa said that the people living in his authority followed his shita in this matter and would actually cut down trees and manufacture a knife on Shabbos in order to perform the Brit Milah. So that was in regard to that. And there's a talking about this, I forget exactly how it goes, but basically that the hashpah of the Psak Din is very much on the people in the place. In Rabbi Yossi Glili's area, maybe in the Galil, they would eat meat of birds with milk, meaning that they followed Rabbi Yossi Glili's sheet and actually ate, chicken with milk. So you had chicken soup, and you want to have a coffee afterwards, kol hakavod. Eat schnitzel, want a coffee afterwards, kol hakavod. So Rabbi Yossi Glili is matzah birds with milk, even midrabanan. Okay, Levi equals by Yosef Rishba. This is also Gemara Shabbos. Levi once visited the house of Yosef Rishba. A Rishba is a bird catcher. Aisul Kameresha the Tabsa. They served Levi a peacock's head and milk. Well, Amrluv Lemidi and Gorn Gezogt. He didn't tell them anything. Meaning he didn't give them musar for eating a bird with milk. Levi obviously didn't eat the dish, as you'll see in the Hemshech HaMaisa, which is clearly spelled out in the Gemara Shabbos as well. Gosel Kamed the Rebbe. When Levi later came before Rebbe and told him what happened, Amalei Rebbe said to him, "Amai like Shamtinu. Why did you not excommunicate the members of Yosef Rishba's household for being over in the Issur Rabbanan against eating basa b'chalav?" Amalei Levi said to Rebbe, Asher Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseru, it's the area of Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseru. Vamina Darshul Kirbiyasi Aglili, and I said to myself, perhaps he paskin for them in a drasha in accordance with Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the Amar Yatza Oiv She'en Lo Chalev Aim, who said that the phrase of the Bachalev Yomai excludes birds that has no mother's milk. My shaila is nar. Where does Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseru got to do with anything? But I guess he knew that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseru over here, followed the sheet of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, and that's where he, got that idea from. Okay. Very interesting, but I think today we are pretty much machmer. And it's not like just a minhag and a messiah or anything, but we're noig, but the realistic, I don't think anybody would, dip a chocolate bar into a hot pot of chicken soup and then just eat it. I think we all know that. Okay, we are now going back to a Mishnah. We have a Mishnah 2 lines down from the bottom of Kuf Tezayin Amud Aleph. Kevas Eved Kechavim V'Shal Nevela Harezu Asura. The Mishnah continues the discussion of Basar B'Chalav as it relates to the use of the skin of the stomach, the obamasum, in the cheese-making process. The fourth stomach, or the true digestive stomach of nursing kids, calves, and other young ruminants, the inner lining of the obamasum contains an enzyme called renin, or chymosin, which when added to milk causes it to coagulate into cheese. Too many fancy words here, but let's just, I think we get what we're saying over here. As one big Talmud Chacham said, the day is going to come when we're going to need an art scroll for an art scroll, and I'm hoping that we can use the original art scroll without having to use the art scroll for the art scroll. Okay, the Mishnah begins its discussion by addressing the halacha regarding the use of rennet, found in the obamasum of an animal which did not undergo shechita, and meaning an avela, and concludes its discussion on a similar note, discussing the application of these halachas to a treifa. Now, what is rennet? So rennet is the congealed milk found in the obamasum, which contains renin, as we mentioned before, and is used in cheese making. The term rennet may also be used as a reference to the membrane lining of the stomach as well as the renin. We will, however, limit our usage of the term to the congealed milk in the obamasum. Okay, so kevas eved kechavim, the rennet, the inside of the stomach of an animal of a goy, b'shel nevela, and or an avela, harez asura is asur to eat. Hamamid ba'arshal kevik sheira, if one curdles milk with the skin of an obamasum, meaning he placed a piece of the actual stomach tissue in milk as a curdling agent in order to produce cheese, we now face the problem that the cheese may have absorbed flavor from the stomach tissue, which is meat. Turns to Amud Beis. In Yesh ben Naisin Tam. Back to our friends in Naisin Tam. If there's enough of the skin of the stomach to impart a flavor into the cheese, the ratio between the stomach tissue and the cheese is such that the stomach tissue would give a discernible flavor into the cheese. Harez Asura, the cheese is now going to be also due to the presence of the meat flavor in the cheese. Nevertheless, the cheese is only going to be also in the Rabbana since the tam has not been merged through cooking. Ksheira sheyanka min atrefa. If a kosher animal suckled from a trefa animal, kevasa asura, the rennet is forbidden. The milk of a trefa animal is asur. So if a kid suckled from a trefa, the milk turned rennet found in the obamasum is going to be asur. Trefa sheyanka min ksheira. If a trefa animal suckled from a kosher animal, kevasa mutaris, the rennet is mutar b'nei shakonis b'meyahav, because the rennet is merely gathered in the kishkes. If the milk turned rennet in this case is not treif milk, but kosher milk, meaning from a kosher animal, the fact that it's presently in the stomach of a treifa does not make it usher. It was not produced there by a treifa kid. It was merely gathered there after being produced elsewhere. The Gemara below will raise the question of why this is different from the rennet found in the stomach of an avela, which was likewise just gathered from elsewhere and is nevertheless considered part of the stomach in which it presently contains, where it's presently contained and ashered as an avela. Okay, Zak the Gemara. Is not the stomach, the inside of the stomach of an animal shechted by a guy actually the keva of an avela? Why does the Mishnah present them as two cases? Mishchita performed by a guy is no good, and the animal is considered an avela, like we learned on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. So what's the chiddush over here? Meaning, what's the Mishnah saying then? Keva sevik kechavim and kevas nevela. On Ravuna and the Gemara, Ravuna hachav lekech yidim nevik kechav maskinu. Here, our Mishnah is talking about a case of the stomach of an animal of a goy, who bought and a yid bought the animal from the guy and then shechted it himself. And in the case where the animal is not a nevela because it was shechted by a yid, it's nevertheless referred to as a kevus kechavim because the rennet was suckled while it was in the possession of the goy. And the reason why the stomach is going to be usher because we're concerned that perhaps the kid, suckled from a treifa. Meaning we're concerned that the stomach that we find now, meaning the stuff that we find in the kid's stomach, which was suckled by the kid while it was still in the possession of the guy, was suckled from a treifa animal, and is going to be usher as milk from a treifa. We can taka concerned that perhaps the kid suckled from a treifa. Vatanya, we learned in a bride to leichin beitzim and every kechavim. You can buy eggs from goyim mein chayshin leimishim nevela v'leimishim treifa, and we're not concerned about them being eggs of a nevela, meaning eggs found inside a bird that died without shechita, which are also for consumption midrabanan. The Brisa is discussing a case where it's established that they're from a kosher bird, and we're not concerned that they are also perhaps from a non-kosher, that they might be from a non-kosher species. But loimishum treifa, we're not considered about them being eggs of a treifa, eggs laid by a treifa bird which are also midaraisa, midaraisa, as we explained on Daf Nun Ches previously. We assume that the eggs are from the majority of eggs which are laid by birds that are not treifas. So in our Mishnah too, we should follow the Raiv and assume that the kid suckled from an animal which is not a treifa. Meaning treifa doesn't mean non-kosher like a horse. Treifa over here means that it became a treifa because it had a hole in the lungs. Rather, we should say that the reason why the keva is usher is because we're concerned that perhaps the kid suckled from a non-kosher animal, whose milk is going to be usher, as the Gemara talks about in Becharos Davav. And what's the difference between a treifa regarding which we're not concerned that perhaps the kid suckled from a treifa, and the non-kosher animal which we are concerned that maybe he did, the baby animal did nurse from? The Gemara, treifa animal is not common for most animals. Do not have treifas, which are fatal defects. The meir shricha, but a non-kosher animal is a lot more common. Yishricha, for the Gemara, if a non-kosher animal is common, why then does the Mishnah ask for only the kevem animal bought by a guy? If you look up the nechash, even with regard to our own, kids raised in our possession and not bought from guy, we should be concerned that perhaps they also nurse from a non-kosher animal, and we should ask for their keva as well. Zak the Gemara, no. Anan de badlinan minayu. For us, we distance ourselves from non-kosher animals. And when we see our baby animals, nursing from a non-kosher animals, we separate them from the non-kosher animals, and the Chachamim did not decree the keva to be usher, but with respect to the goyim, however, who do not distance themselves from non-kosher animals, and when they see their baby animals nursing from a non-kosher animal, they do not separate them from a non-kosher animal. So that is where the Chachamim decreed a Isser against their keva. Ushmol Amar, Nochatar to the Gemara's original kasha, why you have to say Nevela and Ovid Kechavim. Chodakatani, Keva Shkita Sev Kechavim Nevela. No, he reads the Mishnah that it's only one halacha, and should be read as follows. The keva of an animal shechted by a guy is considered Nevela, or Mamela, it will be Aser. But the Shmuel say that the keva found in the animal of a nevela is considered part of the animal itself, and is going to be considered a nevela. Shmuel gezok. Before seeing the next Gemara, we need to give a shtickle akdame or hakdame. The Mishnah by the Zohar of Chavtes Orvei says that the Chachamim were geyser against eating the cheese of goyim. The Mishnah says that Rishmal asked Rabbi Shua why the Chachamim made this gzeira. Rabbi Shua replied, it's because goyim curdled their cheese with the keva of animals that they shechted which are nevelas. Rabbi Shmuel rejected this answer based on the fact that the Chachamim were matter a kohen to drink the keva of a oila, even though a oila is also b'hana. So it may thus be established that the keva found in the stomach of a oila is not considered part of the oila itself, but rather an independent entity. It's its own thing. So with respect to the keva of a nevela as well, the keva is viewed as a separate entity, which is mutter be'achilo, and will not consider the cheese aser. Rabbi Shua then concedes that in fact the keva of an nevela is not considered part of the nevela, and the basis for the gzeira is because the goyim curdle milk with the keva of animal shechted for avodah zarah. Now, even though the keva is a separate entity, nevertheless, since the keva contributes to the appearance of the animal, rendering the animal more desirable as a carbon, or as a tekrevis for avodah zarah, it's considered an object used for avodah zarah, which makes it asur. Rabbi Shmuel refutes this argument as well. For had this been the concern of the Chachamim, there would have been geyser it asur not only for ba'achila, but ba'ana as well, since anything that's brought as tekrevis of avodah zarah is going to be asur ba'ana. So there, Rabbi Yeshua himself does not offer any further explanation on the Gemara. The Gemara there brings different mahalachim as to the actual basis of the Gzeira. Among them is the reason given by Shmuel over here. So, Mibnei asru givina seb kechavim. Why did the Chachamim asr the cheese of goyim to eat? Mibnei shema midin aitzabu or kevas nevela, because they curdle it with the skin of the stomach of a nevela. Meaning they use the stomach itself, which is asr as nevela meat, not the thing inside the stomach. Hakeva gufa sharia, which implies that only the outside stomach of a nevela is asr, but the rennet itself is going to be mutter. Meaning the fact that Shmuel offers a different pshat for the gzeira, asring the cheese of goyim because they curdle it with the stomach itself, implies that he agrees with Rabbi Shmuel's argument that the keva found inside a nevela is mutter, because considered a separate entity and not part of the nevela. How does he explain our Mishnah to read the keva of an animal shechted by a guy is considered a nevela? Exactly more like kasha. Kan kedem chazara, kan liache chazara. Here in our Mishnah, the Mishnah presents halacha as it was told according to the sheet of Rabbi Yeshua before he retracted, meaning before that the rennet contained in a nevela is considered part of the animal and also as a nevela. As we mentioned before, that the back and forth between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yeshua. While here, Shmuel's explanation that the Isser of the Gaisha cheese is on account of it being curdled with the skin of the stomach of an avela, which implies that the rennet contained in the stomach of an avela is mutter. So the statement reflects halacha as it stands after Yeshua backed out of the pshat. Okay, Zok the Gemara Vaitik Shever Sheyonka Ben Atrefa, a kosher animal suckled from a trefa animal. The keva is forbidden. If a trefa animal suckles from a kosher animal, its rennet is permitted and the milk is gathered in its kishkis. Bakatani Reisha, but the first line in the Mishnah taught keves eved kechav shal nevela reza asura. The keva, the rennet of an animal of a goy and of an nevela is asur for consumption. Now, just as the rennet found in the stomach of an nevela is considered to be part of the animal itself and is asur as a nevela, so too the keva found in the stomach of a trefa should be considered part of the animal itself and be asur as a trefa. Rav Chisda said, in fact, the keva is not considered part of the animal in which it's contained, yet although there's no basis to asur it as an nevela or trefa, Reisha, the beginning of the Mishnah, nevertheless, the Rabbanan assured it because of an nevela, because nira ka'echel nevelas, because it looks like he's eating a nevela, meaning you're digging open the nevela and you're taking out part to eat it. Halcha, while here in the Mishnah's second din regarding the keva found in the stomach of a trefa, ikashchita, there's a shchita which was performed on the animal, and the animal is not considered a nevela. Although it may appear that he's eating a trefa, the Chachamim did not make a gzeira because they don't consider a trefa as repugnant as a nevela. Amalei Rava says, "V'lav kol d'chenab is not all the more so. Ma nevela d'meisa." Why? Even regarding a nevela which is disgusting, the yisharis like kevasa, if you're matter the inside of its stomach, you won't come to eat the nevela itself. Amrit loy. You nevertheless say that the keva is not going to be mutter ba'achilo. So trefa shchuta with respect to a shechta trefa, which is not disgusting, the yisharis. And if you are matter its stomach, one would come to eat the trefa itself, so like koshkin. All the more so, is it not certain that the keva should not be permitted ba'achilo? So Zak the Gemara, we have to have another teretz. Elam Rav Yitzchak Rabbi Yechanan. Rav Yitzchak said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, like hash, it's not shvar here. In fact, there was no difference between the keva found in the stomach of an avela and the rennet that's found in the stomach of a trefa. And the answer is as follows: Kan kedem chazara, kan leacha chazara, u'mishnah loizazim im. Meaning that here in the Mishnah's first case, which says that the keva found in the stomach of an avela is asur as part of the animal itself, the Mishnah presents the halacha as it was told according to the sheets of Rabbi Yeshua before he was chayzer to Rabbi Shmuel. Kan leacha chazara, in the second clause of the Mishnah, which says that the keva found in the stomach of a trefa that it's going to be mutter as a separate entity, the Mishnah presents the halacha as it was taught after Rabbi Yeshua's chazara, at which point he held that the rennet is not considered part of the animal which it was found, and both the keva found in the stomach of a treifa and the keva found in the stomach of an avela are going to be mutter. But the earlier teaching of the Mishnah, which had already been incorporated into the Mishnaic corpus, did not move from its place. Meaning, although the Mishnah now holds that the keva found inside an avela is mutter, as evidence from the second part of the Mishnah, when you find the keva inside a treifa, the original nusach of the Mishnah was not changed to reflect the later position. Rabbi Rabbi said, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, we make curdled cheese with the rennet found in the oba masum of nevelis. In accordance with the post-retraction teaching that the cave of nevelis is mutter, it's considered separate and an independent entity, or because, according to the Rif, it's considered digested waste. I mean, it's not real anything. It's just garbage, mostly garbage. There's like the Gemara, but you cannot curdle cheese with the keva found in the stomach of an animal shechted by a guy, as the Gemara will explain. Rav Rabba said to Rav Rabba, maybe they were brothers. Come on, who's this going like Rabbi Lezer? It's going according like Rabbi Lezer. Who said that the unspecified kavana, or intent, of a guy is for avodah zarah. The only apparent reason for distinguishing between the keva of an avela and the keva of an animal shechted by a guy would be if we presume that the guy shechted for the sake of avodah zarah. For then, even though the keva is classified as a separate entity, it's nevertheless going to be considered asur because it contributes to the appearance of the animal, which makes it more desirable as a carbon, which would make it a problem of the krevis of avodah zarah. So Rav Shimon bar Abba asks, with whom does this ruling accord? If not, like Rabbi Lezer. So Amalei, Rabbi bar Abba said, no, Kaman. Well, with whom else could this ruling possibly accord? Meaning you don't need to have asked, because it's obvious that this goes like Rabbi Lezer and no one else. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak came to Bavel. He said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, you may curdle cheese both with the keva found in the stomach of an avela, as well as with the stuff found in the stomach of an animal shechted by a guy, with no concern for the words of Rabbi Lezer that the unspecified kavana or machshava of a guy is for avodah zarah. And the bottom line is, halach is in mamida bar kevas navela, you may not curdle cheese with the skin of the stomach of an avela. Aval mamida bekevas navela, but you may curdle cheese with the keva found in the stomach of the nevela. And with regard to the keva found in the stomach of an animal shechted by a guy, and with the keva found in the stomach of a kosher animal that was nursed from a treifa, and certainly with the keva found in the stomach of a treifa animal that was nursed from a kosher animal. My timer, what's the reason? Cholav hamachunas ba, all the milk gathered inside the stomach, pirsha be'alma, who is mere refuse. Meaning that it's no longer classified as milk, but as digested waste, and accordingly, even if the stuff found in the stomach of a kid that's suckled from a treifa is going to be mutter, because it is garbage, and it is nothing more than garbage. Okay, Ad Kan. We will see you in the next year in Daf Kuf Yu Dayan.